In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Now, before you respond, Christ is in our midst. It's getting there. I have a question for all of you today, or more like a riddle. It's something we have that we can spend and we can give, but we can never get it back. We cannot get it on loan or give it on loan. We cannot return it, and we cannot steal it. What is it? Time. Time. Time is the gift. It is not something we take for granted, but it's a gift. And to all those who are older, I every time they see the children of the church, they say, "Oh, I remember what it was like to be small and to be a child, and how wonderful that is. They have their whole life ahead of them." And if we think about our time and what our time consists of, there's really 5 areas that I see that our time consists of: work, family, recreation, God, and waste. Now, if you could think of something else, that's great. But I think those are the 5 points of time that we typically apply ourselves in. We go to work. Everybody, it's interesting. My daughter asks me, she's been asking every morning, she goes, "Daddy, why do you have to go to work every day?" And they just don't get it at that point in time. But that's where we spend a lot of our time as men, as women, and as workers in the workforce. We spend a lot of time at work. We spend time with our family. Sometimes that time is neglected because of the imbalance of the amount of time that we spend at work. Sometimes our time for recreation is imbalanced too. Sometimes we don't take the proper time to recharge, to be with our family, to spend a twofold amount of time. One with our family and one to re-energize or to relax ourselves. The one aspect of time where God comes in is what I'll be talking about today. But the last aspect of time is one that people continually find time to do, and that's to waste. Do we waste time in front of television sets? We waste time in traffic. We waste time on frivolous things, window shopping, gossiping, sleeping, not applying ourselves or looking at all the tasks that need to get done and just watching them pile up. You know, if we think about the liturgy and what we say in one of the lines in the liturgy, "Let us commit ourselves and one another and our whole life to Christ our God." That's what we say in the Divine Liturgy. So if we say that, what part of time are we committing to God? According to the church, we're supposed to commit our whole life to God. Not just a portion of the time that we have, but our whole amount of time that we have. And St. Paul mentions in his letter, he says, to pray without ceasing, to continually use our time to pray to God. But how many of us realistically do that? How many of us realistically, besides the Sunday services, take time to sit down in front of our icons or in a quiet place in our home and to pray to God as earnestly as we do on Sundays? You know, in the creation of God, we think about God creating the world, the heavens and the earth and everything. But what was the first thing that God created? What did He create? Was it angels? Was it heaven? Was it earth? The theology of the church says that the first thing that God created was time, because He had to start the clock ticking in order to be on the other side of eternity. Because had He created the angels first and then time, the angels would have been beyond time. They would have been forever. But the first thing that God created was time. And what does He say at the end times? We hear the end times. We hear the revelation of God. What happens to that clock? And why do we face east? Because we wait for the sunrise that comes up and never sets. The day that never ends. Because what? Time stops. And at that point in time, when time stops again, then we have eternity. Because there is no measure of time anymore. So when we say we live with God for eternity in the kingdom of heaven, or we don't live with God for eternity, eternity is when that clock is shut off by God and now He says there's no more time. But there's also another clock that's running for each one of us individually. There's the larger clock, if you want to say it, of the world that started at creation and ends at the end times. But there was a clock that started in you when you were conceived and will end when you die. And when you die and you go to be with God, there is no more time for change. And I see all too often in our church and as a priest and as a chaplain and a pastor that so many times people say, I wish I had a little more time with so-and-so. I wish I had the time to tell them how I felt. Or I wish I had the time to spend with them. Or I wish I had spent so much time with them instead of wasting my time on things that didn't pay off on a relationship. Relationships take time. There is no one in this church that has a good relationship with another person that just they picked up at a drive-through window. It takes time. It takes forgiveness. It takes love. It takes sacrifice. And most of all, it takes time. No good relationship in this world has ever come without the investiture of time. We remember birthdays. We celebrate special times. We ask for time from one another to earn someone's trust. Give me time to earn your trust. How many times have we heard that in the workforce? Give me time to show you what I can do. Give me time to become something that you will appreciate. How many times have you heard, in time you will understand? Or, give it some time and things will change. Well, time in the church does not just clock in on Sunday and clock out Sunday late morning. Time exists every day in between each and every Sunday that has ever been created. And every moment between those Sundays, we are called to spend time with God. It is not a switch that we can turn on and off. We can't just wake up and say, this is God time, this is not God time. I come to church, I leave church, I start my old habits again. But we have to remember that time is something that we have been given as a gift so that we can do what with it? God has given us the gift of time for one simple reason. Not to age, not to become wiser, not to become more wealthy or to have worldly achievements, but the gift of time for us by God has been given to us so that we can use it to have a meaningful relationship with God. That's the simple reason we're here. That's the whole reason for our life. To take our lives and to develop a relationship with God. Because if God had already given us that relationship, it wouldn't be a choice on our part. It wouldn't be something of worth. And if you think about it, what are the greatest things in your life that you have that you can sit there and say that you truly appreciate? It's the things that you've worked for. And if you talk to, you see it on TV all the time, you see wealthy families that own either hotels or other multi-billionaire companies. And what happens to their children? Many times they get lost because they don't appreciate things. They haven't worked, they haven't struggled, and they haven't used their time for anything but waste. So our life is called by God to eliminate one of those 5 aspects of our use of time. And what is that? To eliminate the waste and to double up on the time that we spend with God. Because God doesn't want us to neglect our work. He says in the Epistle of Timothy, "He who does not work, let him not eat." And then he says about families, he says, "Love one another as I have loved you." So he calls us to work. He calls us to spend time with our family. He even calls us to retreat, to regroup ourselves, as he did with his fasting. But many times we see our fasting as a punishment and not a chance to escape from the world and to collect ourselves. Today we heard the gospel of Lazarus and the rich man. And Lazarus was the man who was sick and poor, and he was laying at the gate of the rich man's home. Laying at the gate. Now think of this in your terms. Not a gate, but at the end of your driveway. How many times are you in and out of your driveway? Twice a day, at least, for most? Now you think, the man was there at the end of the rich man's driveway, laying there with sores and hungry. And the times that the rich man spent passing him over and over and over and over. Because where was Lazarus? He was at the rich man's gate, looking for something. Looking for what? Time. Looking for the rich man to turn and glance at him, to spend a single moment in time to acknowledge his existence. And what happens at the end? The rich man is cursed, and he is sent to Hades, where he will spend forever thinking about the time that he didn't spend on Lazarus. You know, sometimes I think, and I mention this in many of my sermons, what would God ask us if he had a trick question for us at the time of our death? And today I was thinking that he sorts us all by age, from the young to the old. And he says, okay, you, Joe, are 82 years old. And I know you had a family and all these things in your life. How much time did you spend learning about who I am? And give me an essay of who I am. Tell me who I am as God. Said you had 82 years to do that. And I always think, God's going to have that big screen with the, showing not only the bad parts of our life, but if he did a graph of the chart. And I had once given a sermon where my dad had this, he still has it, it's like this monstrous dictionary. It's literally like a foot thick. And I don't even know, I think all the words are legitimate. It's a Webster's dictionary, but it's gigantic. And I counted up all the pages, and I forget what it was, like 1,800 pages or something ridiculous like that. And then I did the hours of our days and how many days to a year and how many years to the average lifespan. And I figured that out of this large dictionary, that if we took a little marker and put a dot on one of the pages, that's the amount of time in our life that we spend praying. Think about it. And if that whole book was eternity, and God said, here's eternity. Let me see how much you prepared for it. Oh, it's a little dot on the page. Isn't that nice? What do you know about me with this little dot that you've done? That would be awful. But statistically, that's what we do. That's how much time we spend. So, who is God and how do we get to know him? We get to know him through the sacraments of the church, which take what? Our time. It took your time to be here today. We get to know who he is through the teachings of the church. But what does that take? That takes your time, not only to bring your children to the programs where they learn about God, but also for you to invest time too in the programs that are geared towards adults to learn about God. Because time is something that we cannot get back. It is something that we're given as a gift and we're called not to waste. So, as stewards, and these next 3 Sundays, like I had mentioned, we're going to talk about time, talents, and treasures. Today, I want you to think about, for this new stewardship year, what are you going to spend in time? Not to me, not to say, oh, Father, I'll come to the church and I'll sit in the pew for 4 hours, a month, and that should do it. No. What are you going to do beyond the pew? beyond the pew of the church? What are you going to do for others on the outside, for those laying at the end of your driveway, for those who are in need that we pass by, even in our own families? How are you going to spend the time to cultivate your souls through education with God, to read the Bible? And the Bible, I think, is a scary word for many of us as Orthodox Christians. We say the Bible, and if I said, well, all right, we're going to have a quiz today that God gave me this morning on the Bible, and I'm going to pass it around, no cheating, because that's an immediate, what do they call it? I'll say it, it's a hell express, as we used to say in the seminary, where you don't pass, there's no tolls, you just go straight down. But if we said, we have to pass this test, and you have to get at least 3 out of 5 questions right, and they're all based in the Bible, and you've had how many years to study the Bible? What if we had a test like that? I think all of us are like, I got to go home and read the Bible and start learning things. I know it. I know what the education of Orthodox Christians is for the Bible. It's very poor. And the church fathers, if it was something, name something the church fathers wrote about, and name that church father. I mean, if this was a game show, we'd all walk out broke. So the time has to be invested. And where does that come from? It comes from the church. These things, you can learn about these things in this church. But it's a matter of you investing the time to learn about them. And the amazing thing is, the more you learn, the more it brings together who you are as an Orthodox Christian. The more you understand about the gospel and about who Jesus is and who his saints are and the stories in the gospels, the more you are able to apply them to your life. But it just doesn't start and end here. It's each and every day of the year. So for 2008, as a steward of the church, I want you to make a commitment to God to spend more time with him, to make your relationship with him stronger. Because if we don't work on that now, when our clock is up, that's it. And if we listen to the story today about Lazarus and the rich man wanted more time. Just a little bit. Go back and just warn my family. Just go back and have Lazarus raised from the dead and show them how the kingdom of God is. And what does God say back? He says, they have Moses and the prophets, let them learn. What does that mean to us? We have the Old and the New Testament, read it. Because if you don't believe in that and you don't read that, how can you understand the greater things such as resurrection and the presence of the kingdom of heaven and Hades? How can we do that if we don't spend the time? In your stewardship this year, it's not on your card. There's some things on your stewardship card on how you want to get involved in the church, but it's not all there. It's something between you and God, as stewardship always is. But how are you going to make your relationship stronger with God this coming year? One of the ways to do that is to spend quality time with you and God and to spend it with his people as well. Amen.